This is Santa Barbara, Mexico Corruption and Extortion, written by Jason Stewart and read for you by David. Chapter 1. Dangerous Tides, pages 1-4. The story begins where the Pacific meets the shore, in a Santa Barbara that gleams with prosperity and hides its secrets well. Mayor Adrian Castellano stands at the height of his power, young, charismatic, beloved by a city that sees in him the promise of progressive leadership and ethical governance. He has built his political career on transparency, on promises to clean up the corruption that plagued previous administrations, on a vision of Santa Barbara as a model of good governance. But even the most carefully constructed public image has cracks, and Adrian's are beginning to show. The pressure of maintaining perfection, of living up to impossible expectations, of navigating the complex web of interests that surround any municipal government, it's taking its toll. He tells himself that the small compromises are necessary, that you can't govern effectively without making deals, that the end justifies the means. He doesn't yet realize how far he's already fallen, or how much further he has to go. Enter Special Agent Maya Reyes, newly assigned to the DEA's Santa Barbara field office. She's been sent to investigate rumors of corruption in the city government, whispers of connections between municipal officials and cross-border drug trafficking operations. It's a sensitive assignment, one that requires discretion and political savvy. Maya has both, along with a reputation for being incorruptible, for following the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of who gets hurt. Their first meeting is at a city council reception, a glittering affair where politicians and law enforcement officials mingle with donors and community leaders. It should be routine, forgettable, a handshake, a few pleasantries, nothing more, but there's a spark, an immediate and undeniable attraction that catches them both off guard. Adrian sees in Maya something he's been missing. Authenticity, perhaps, or danger, or simply someone who looks at him and sees a man rather than a political asset. Maya sees in Adrian the complexity she's learned to recognize in her work, charm masking calculation, idealism corrupted by pragmatism, a good man making bad choices. They both know better. Maya especially knows better. She's investigating his administration, for God's sake. Getting involved would be a catastrophic breach of professional ethics, a betrayal of her oath, potentially criminal. But knowing better and acting accordingly are two different things, and in this chapter, we watch as they begin the dance that will destroy them both. The chapter establishes the setting in rich detail. Santa Barbara's beauty and wealth, the contrast between the city's public face and its hidden corruption, the complex ecosystem of municipal politics. We meet key supporting characters. Adrian's chief of staff, who knows more than he's saying, Maya's supervisor, Regional Director James Thornton, whose interest in the investigation seems both professional and personal, the city council members who represent various factions and interests, the shadowy figures who operate in the background, pulling strings and collecting debts. By the chapter's end, Adrian and Maya have crossed a line. Perhaps just a conversation that goes on too long, a look that lingers, a moment of connection that both recognize as dangerous. They tell themselves it won't happen again. They're lying, and they know it. Chapter 2. Forbidden Ground, pages 5-8. The affair begins in earnest, and with it, the real corruption. This chapter explores the development of Adrian and Maya's relationship against the backdrop of Maya's investigation. Every meeting is a risk, every conversation a potential betrayal. They tell themselves they can keep it separate, that Maya's personal feelings won't compromise her professional judgment, that Adrian's involvement with a federal agent won't influence his political decisions. These are the lies we tell ourselves when we want something badly enough. The physical relationship develops with an intensity born of its forbidden nature. Every encounter carries the thrill of transgression, the knowledge that discovery would mean ruin for both of them. They meet in secret, a beach house owned by Adrian's family, hotel rooms registered under false names, late-night drives along the coast, The sex is passionate and desperate, fueled by the knowledge that it shouldn't be happening, that every moment together is stolen from the lives they're supposed to be living. But it's not just physical. Against all logic, they're falling in love. Adrian finds in Maya someone he can be honest with, someone who sees his flaws and doesn't turn away. He tells her things he's never told anyone, his doubts about his ability to govern effectively, his fear that he's becoming the kind of politician he once despised, his growing awareness that he's entangled in something he doesn't fully understand. Maya, for her part, discovers that Adrian is more complicated than her investigation suggested. He's not simply corrupt. He's compromised, caught between competing pressures, trying to do good while making deals with people who have no interest in the public welfare. This is where the moral complexity of the story deepens. Maya begins to understand that the corruption in Santa Barbara isn't a simple matter of bad actors doing bad things. It's systemic, woven into the fabric of how the city operates. Adrian didn't create it, he inherited it, but he's also perpetuating it, making choices that serve his political survival at the expense of his principles. And now Maya is compromised too, her judgment clouded by her feelings, her investigation tainted by her personal involvement. The chapter also develops the external threats. Maya's investigation is uncovering connections between city officials and a Mexican cartel operating in the region. Money is flowing through legitimate businesses, favors are being traded, and people who ask too many questions are being silenced. Adrian is more deeply involved than Maya initially realized, not as a willing participant, but as someone who's been gradually drawn in, who's made small compromises that have accumulated into something much larger and more dangerous. Regional Director Thornton begins to suspect that Maya's investigation isn't progressing as it should. He questions her findings, pushes her to dig deeper, watches her more closely. There's something in his attention that feels personal, that suggests his interest in the case goes beyond professional duty. Maya realizes she's being tested, that her supervisor suspects something but doesn't yet have proof. The chapter ends with a moment of crisis. Adrian receives a threat, subtle but unmistakable from the people he's been dealing with. They know about Maya, they know about the investigation, and they're making it clear that Adrian needs to control the situation, or there will be consequences. For the first time, Adrian realizes that he's not just risking his career, he's risking his life and Maya's. Chapter 3. The Web Tightens. Pages 9 to 12. The investigation intensifies, and with it, the danger. Maya knows she should end the affair, should recuse herself from the case, should do something to extract herself from the impossible situation she's created. But she's in too deep now, emotionally and professionally. She convinces herself that she can still do her job, that her feelings for Adrian won't prevent her from pursuing the truth. She's wrong, but she won't admit it yet. This chapter takes us deeper into the corruption network. We learn about the key players, a Mexican cartel that's been expanding its operations into California, using Santa Barbara as a hub for money laundering and distribution, a group of local businessmen who facilitate the cartel's operations in exchange for protection and profit, city officials who look the other way or actively assist in exchange for campaign contributions and personal enrichment. Adrian is caught in the middle, not a mastermind, but a tool, someone whose political ambitions have made him vulnerable to manipulation. The mechanics of the corruption are detailed here. We see how money moves through the system, how legitimate businesses are used to launder drug profits, how political campaigns are funded with dirty money, how law enforcement is compromised through a combination of bribes and threats. It's a sophisticated operation, one that's been running for years, long before Adrian became mayor. But his administration has provided new opportunities, and the people running the operation have taken full advantage. Maya's investigation is making progress, but it's also making her a target. She receives warnings, nothing overt, just subtle indications that she's being watched, that her activities are known, that she should be careful. She increases her security precautions, But she also knows that if the people she's investigating want to hurt her, they'll find a way. Adrian is being squeezed from multiple directions. The cartel wants more from him, more access, more protection, more active participation in their operations. His political opponents are circling, sensing weakness, preparing to exploit any scandal. His staff is growing suspicious of his behavior, his absences, his distraction. And Maya is pushing him to cooperate with her investigation, to provide evidence, to help her build a case against the people who are using him. The chapter includes a pivotal scene where Adrian and Maya have a brutal argument. She demands that he choose between his political career and doing the right thing, between protecting himself and protecting the city he's sworn to serve. He argues that it's not that simple, that if he cooperates with her investigation, he'll be killed, that the people he's dealing with don't make idle threats. She accuses him of cowardice, of using the danger as an excuse to avoid taking responsibility for his choices. He accuses her of naivety, of not understanding the reality of the situation, of putting her career ahead of his life. It's a devastating confrontation, one that exposes the fundamental incompatibility of their positions. Maya is a federal agent. Her duty is to the law, to justice, to the investigation. Adrian is a politician. His instinct is to survive, to negotiate, to find a way out that doesn't destroy him. They both have valid points, and they're both wrong. The argument ends without resolution, with both of them angry and hurt and more isolated than before. But they can't stay away from each other. Despite everything, despite the danger and the betrayal and the impossibility of their situation, they're drawn back together. The chapter ends with them in bed, the sex tinged with desperation, both of them knowing that this can't continue, that something has to break, that the web is tightening around them and soon there will be no escape. Chapter 4. Exposure, pages 13 to 16. The truth begins to emerge, and with it, the consequences. This chapter is where the various threads of the narrative converge, where secrets are revealed, where the carefully maintained facades begin to crumble. Maya's investigation reaches a critical point. She has evidence, documents, recordings, testimony from witnesses who've been granted immunity. She has enough to bring charges against several city officials, to expose the connections between the municipal government and the cartel, to blow the whole operation apart. But she also knows that going public with what she's found will destroy Adrian, will expose their affair, will end both their careers, and possibly get them both killed. She's faced with an impossible choice, and this chapter explores her internal struggle. She's a federal agent. Her duty is clear, but she's also in love with a man who will be destroyed by her investigation. She tries to find a middle path, a way to pursue justice without sacrificing Adrian, but there isn't one. The corruption is too deep, Adrian's involvement too extensive. If she does her job, she destroys the man she loves. If she protects Adrian, she betrays everything she's sworn to uphold. Meanwhile, Adrian is making his own desperate calculations. He knows the investigation is closing in. He knows that his involvement with Maya has been discovered by the people he's been dealing with. He knows that he's running out of time and options. He considers cooperating with Maya's investigation, turning state's evidence, trying to save himself by betraying the people who've been using him. But he also knows what happens to people who cooperate with federal investigations of cartel operations. He's seen the bodies, heard the stories. Witness protection is no guarantee of safety, and even if he survives, his life as he knows it is over. The chapter includes a series of tense confrontations. Adrian meets with the cartel representatives, trying to buy time, to negotiate some kind of arrangement that will satisfy them without completely compromising himself. They're not interested in negotiation. They want results. They want the investigation shut down. They want Maya neutralized. They want Adrian to prove his loyalty. The threat is explicit. Cooperate fully or face the consequences. Maya meets with Regional Director Thornton, who has finally pieced together what's been happening. He knows about the affair. He knows that Maya's investigation has been compromised. He's furious, disappointed, and something else. There's a personal edge to his anger that suggests his interest in Maya goes beyond professional concern. He gives her an ultimatum: end the affair immediately, recuse herself from the case, and accept whatever disciplinary action is deemed appropriate, or face criminal charges for obstruction of justice. But Thornton also reveals something crucial. He's been running his own parallel investigation, one that goes beyond Maya's work, one that has uncovered connections she didn't know about. The corruption in Santa Barbara is part of something larger, a network that extends into federal law enforcement, into state government, into institutions that are supposed to be beyond reproach. And Thornton has his own agenda, his own reasons for wanting to see this investigation through to its conclusion. The chapter's climax comes when Maya and Adrian meet one final time. She tells him everything: about Thornton's ultimatum, about the extent of the evidence against him, about the impossibility of their situation. She begs him to cooperate, to help her build a case against the people who've been using him, to save himself while he still can. He refuses, not out of loyalty to the cartel, but out of a grim understanding of reality. Cooperation means death. If not immediately, then eventually. His only chance is to try to ride it out, to hope that the investigation doesn't produce enough evidence to charge him, to survive long enough to find some other way out. They both know this is goodbye. They both know that what happens next will destroy one or both of them. The chapter ends with them parting. Maya returning to her investigation with a hardened resolve, Adrian returning to his office to face whatever comes next, both of them aware that the exposure they've been dreading is now inevitable. Chapter 5. The Fall, pages 17 to 20. This is the chapter where everything collapses. The investigation goes public, the media descends, and the carefully constructed world that Adrian has built comes crashing down around him. The chapter opens with the news breaking: federal indictments against multiple city officials, allegations of corruption and cartel connections, evidence of money laundering and extortion. Adrian's name is everywhere, his face on every screen, his past statements about transparency and ethical governance played on loop as bitter irony. The city is in shock. The people who believed in him feel betrayed. His political allies distance themselves. His enemies smell blood. But Adrian isn't arrested. Not yet. The evidence against him is substantial but not conclusive. He's clearly involved, clearly compromised, but the question of whether he was a willing participant or a victim of extortion remains open. His lawyers advise him to resign, to negotiate a plea deal, to try to salvage something from the wreckage. He refuses. Resignation is admission of guilt, and he's not ready to admit defeat. Maya is also in crisis. Her affair with Adrian has been exposed, leaked to the media by someone with access to the investigation files. Her credibility is destroyed. Her career is over. She's been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The case she's built is now tainted by her personal involvement, and there's a real possibility that the corruption charges will be dismissed because of prosecutorial misconduct. She knows who leaked the information: Thornton. He's been maneuvering behind the scenes, using the investigation for his own purposes, positioning himself to benefit from the chaos. Maya realizes that she's been a pawn in a larger game, that Thornton's interest in the case was never purely about justice. He has his own connections, his own agenda, his own reasons for wanting to see Adrian destroyed and the Santa Barbara political establishment disrupted. The chapter explores the aftermath of exposure from multiple perspectives. We see the city council scrambling to respond, some members calling for Adrian's resignation, others defending him, all of them trying to protect their own interests. We see the media frenzy, the reporters digging into every aspect of Adrian's life, the talking heads debating his guilt or innocence. We see the cartel's response: cold, calculated, and brutal. People who were involved in the operation start disappearing or turning up dead. Witnesses recant their testimony. Evidence disappears. The message is clear. This is what happens when you cooperate with federal investigations. Adrian is increasingly isolated. His staff has abandoned him. His political allies have turned their backs. Even his family is keeping their distance, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. He's alone in the mayor's office, watching his world disintegrate, knowing that worse is coming but unable to stop it. He reaches out to Maya one last time. It's a desperate call, late at night, both of them knowing they shouldn't be in contact but unable to help themselves. They don't talk about the investigation or the scandal or what happens next. They talk about what might have been, about the life they could have had if circumstances had been different, if they'd met in another time, another place, another life. It's a moment of genuine connection in the midst of catastrophe, a reminder that beneath all the corruption and betrayal and political maneuvering, there were two people who loved each other and whose love destroyed them both. The chapter builds to its terrible climax. Adrian receives a final message from the cartel. He's become a liability, and liabilities are eliminated. He knows what's coming. He considers running, but where would he go? He considers going to the police, but what protection could they offer? He considers ending it himself, on his own terms. But he's not quite ready to give up. The chapter ends with Adrian leaving his office late at night, walking to his car in the underground parking garage. The reader knows what's coming. But Adrian seems almost at peace, as if he's accepted the inevitable. The final lines of the chapter are deliberately ambiguous. We hear footsteps, see shadows, sense the presence of others, and then the chapter ends, leaving Adrian's fate hanging in the balance, though we all know how this story ends. Chapter 6. Aftermath, pages 21 to 24. Adrian Castellanos is dead. The chapter opens with the news, with the discovery of his body, with the official statements and the unofficial speculation. The cause of death is initially unclear. Was it murder, suicide, an accident? The investigation is ongoing, but everyone knows the truth. Adrian was killed because he knew too much, because he'd become a liability, because in the world he'd gotten involved with, there's only one way to ensure silence. This chapter explores the immediate aftermath of Adrian's death from multiple perspectives. Maya is devastated, consumed by guilt and grief. She blames herself. If she'd handled the investigation differently, if she'd never gotten involved with him, if she'd pushed him harder to cooperate or protected him better, maybe he'd still be alive. She knows these thoughts are irrational, that Adrian made his own choices, that the forces that killed him were set in motion long before she arrived in Santa Barbara. But knowing doesn't ease the pain. She's also facing the consequences of her actions. The internal investigation has concluded that she violated multiple departmental policies and federal regulations. She's been fired from the DEA, her security clearance revoked, her career in law enforcement over. There's talk of criminal charges, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, abuse of power, but ultimately the decision is made not to prosecute. The case is too messy, too politically sensitive, and prosecuting Maya would require revealing details about the investigation that powerful people want kept quiet. The city of Santa Barbara is in chaos. The mayor is dead, multiple city officials have been indicted, and the municipal government is barely functioning. An interim mayor has been appointed, a city council member with no connection to the scandal, someone meant to provide stability and reassurance. But everyone knows it's temporary. A special election will be held, and the question of who will lead the city forward is very much open. This is where Regional Director James Thornton makes his move. Throughout the investigation, he's been positioning himself, building relationships, cultivating support. He's been careful to distance himself from the scandal while also taking credit for exposing the corruption. He's presented himself as the incorruptible federal agent who brought down a corrupt political machine, the man who can be trusted to clean up the mess. And now he announces his intention to run for mayor of Santa Barbara. It's an audacious move, unprecedented in many ways. Federal law enforcement officials don't typically transition directly into elected political office. especially not in cities where they've just conducted major investigations. But Thornton has been planning this for months, maybe years. He's been building a narrative. Santa Barbara needs someone from outside the existing political establishment, someone with law enforcement experience, someone who can restore trust and accountability. He's the perfect candidate, or so he claims. The chapter explores the reactions to Thornton's candidacy. Some people are supportive, seeing him as exactly the kind of outsider the city needs. Others are suspicious, questioning his motives, wondering what he really wants. Maya is horrified. She knows Thornton better than most, knows that his interest in the investigation was never purely about justice, knows that he's been manipulating events for his own benefit. But she's in no position to oppose him. She has no credibility, no platform, no power. The chapter also reveals more about Thornton's background and motivations. He's ambitious, certainly, but it's more than that. He has his own history with Santa Barbara, his own reasons for wanting power in the city. There are hints of past connections, of old grievances, of a long game that's finally reaching its conclusion. He's not simply an opportunist taking advantage of a crisis. He's someone who's been working toward this moment for a long time. The investigation into Adrian's death goes nowhere. The official conclusion is that he was killed by cartel operatives in retaliation for cooperating with federal authorities, a conclusion that's both true and false. Adrian didn't cooperate, but the cartel killed him anyway, because his continued existence was a risk they weren't willing to take. No arrests are made, no one is charged. The case remains officially open but practically closed. The chapter ends with Maya leaving Santa Barbara. There's nothing left for her there. No job, no future, no reason to stay. She's lost everything: her career, her reputation, the man she loved. As she drives away, she looks back at the city one last time, at the beautiful coastline and the Spanish architecture and the wealth and privilege that hide so much darkness. She knows that nothing has really changed, that the corruption will continue under new management, that Thornton's election will simply replace one compromised administration with another, but she's powerless to stop it, and she's too broken to try. Chapter 7. New Order. Pages 25 to 27. The final chapter takes place 6 months after Adrian's death. James Thornton has been elected mayor of Santa Barbara in a landslide victory. His campaign was masterful. He positioned himself as the reformer the city needed, the incorruptible lawman who would clean up the corruption and restore trust in government. The voters, desperate for change and reassurance, embraced him enthusiastically. The chapter opens with Thornton's inauguration. It's a grand affair, full of symbolism and rhetoric about new beginnings and restored integrity. Thornton gives a speech about transparency and accountability, about serving the public interest, about learning from the mistakes of the past. It's a compelling performance, and most of the audience believes every word. But we, the readers, know better. The chapter gradually reveals the reality behind Thornton's administration. The corruption hasn't ended, it's simply changed management. Thornton has his own connections, his own deals, his own network of interests that he's serving. He's more sophisticated than Adrian, more careful, more skilled at maintaining the appearance of integrity while operating in the shadows. But he's no less compromised. The investigation that brought down Adrian's administration has been quietly closed. The indictments against other city officials have been dropped or reduced to minor charges. The cartel operations continue, but now with Thornton's tacit approval and protection. He's made his own deals, negotiated his own arrangements. The money still flows, the corruption continues, but now it's managed by someone who knows how to keep it hidden. The chapter includes a scene where Thornton meets with the same cartel representatives who threatened Adrian. The meeting is cordial, professional. They discuss arrangements, territories, protocols. Thornton makes it clear that he's not Adrian. He won't be manipulated or intimidated. But he's also pragmatic. He understands that the cartel's operations are going to continue regardless of what he does, so he might as well ensure that they continue in a way that serves his interests. It's a devil's bargain, but Thornton has convinced himself that it's the realistic approach, the only way to maintain order and stability. We also see how Thornton has consolidated power. He's appointed loyalists to key positions, marginalized potential opponents, built a political machine that serves his interests. He's more effective than Adrian ever was, more ruthless, more willing to do whatever it takes to maintain control. The city is running smoothly under his leadership, the corruption hidden beneath a veneer of good governance. The chapter includes a brief scene with Maya, now living in another city, working a private security job that's far beneath her qualifications. She sees news coverage of Thornton's administration, watches him give interviews about his commitment to transparency and ethical governance, and feels sick. She knows the truth, but she's powerless to expose it. She tried to fight corruption and lost everything. She's not going to make that mistake again. There's a moment where Maya considers going public with what she knows about Thornton, about his manipulation of the investigation, about his own corruption. But she realizes it would be futile. She has no evidence, no credibility, no platform. Thornton has won, completely and decisively. The system that was supposed to provide accountability has instead rewarded his manipulation and ambition. The chapter, and the story, ends with a scene that mirrors the opening. Thornton stands on the same beach where Adrian once stood, looking out at the Pacific, contemplating his power and his future. He's achieved what he set out to achieve. He's mayor of Santa Barbara, with all the power and influence that entails. He's successfully navigated the dangerous waters of corruption and ambition, emerging not just unscathed, but triumphant. But there's a shadow over his victory. He knows what he's done, what he's become. He knows that he's no different from Adrian, except that he's better at hiding it, more skilled at maintaining the appearance of integrity while serving his own interests. He tells himself that he's doing what's necessary, that this is how power works, that idealism is for people who don't understand the real world. The final lines of the story are deliberately ambiguous. Thornton receives a phone call. We don't hear the conversation, but we see his expression change, see the calculation in his eyes. Someone wants something from him, and he's already figuring out how to turn the request to his advantage. The corruption continues, the cycle repeats, and the beautiful city by the sea remains as compromised as ever, just under new management. The story ends not with resolution, but with continuation, with the understanding that the problems it has explored, corruption, the abuse of power, the compromise of institutions meant to serve the public, are not solved by the removal of one corrupt official or even by the exposure of one corrupt network. They're systemic, deeply embedded in how power operates, and they persist regardless of who holds office or what promises are made. It's a dark ending, but an honest one. And it leaves the reader with uncomfortable questions. How much of what we've read is fiction, and how much is simply a dramatized version of how power actually works? Can institutions be reformed, or are they inevitably corrupted by the people who operate them? What happens when the people meant to fight corruption are themselves corrupt? And what recourse do ordinary citizens have when the systems meant to protect them have been compromised? These are the questions the story asks, and it offers no easy answers. Only the invitation to think, to question, to remain vigilant, and to understand that the price of freedom and justice is eternal skepticism about those who claim to serve the public interest. You have been listening to Santa Barbara, Mexico, Corruption and Extortion, written by Jason Stewart and read for you by David, published by Jason Stewart, The End.